Hello and welcome for showing up our webinar. It has been a long time. It's been something of a hiatus for me. I was traveling quite a bit. It's been a bit longer break than I would have really loved to take. So not really on a vacation though, but still there was a break in our continuity. But this is our 17th webinar, which is on blockchain, something different. So far, we've done a lot of webinars on PCI DSS, SOC 2, GDPR, and stuff. But this is something new that we received quite a bit of request for, as to blockchain, Bitcoin, and people are floating it around. Companies are floating it around as a panacea, like everything you should have Bitcoin in place, stuff like that. So we thought of doing a webinar on that. So I really hope you enjoy. So stay tight, and here we go. This is a brief about me. This is me, the face to the voice. Narendra Sahu. I have my own company that is Vista Infosec. We're not here to do product sales. I'm not here to sell you any sort of Bitcoin technologies and stuff like that. We're purely into consulting, and I've been like there for like 25 years almost. And I'm myself a PCI, QSA, CISSP, CISA, CRISC, and many other things. Okay, going ahead. For those of you who have missed our previous webinars, because we've done like 16, 17 so far, and you can always go to our YouTube channel. It's got a fair number of subscribers. You can always subscribe and watch the earlier webinars. Quite a few are there, and going ahead in the coming months, we've got a treat lined up, because it's not just compliance. We are looking at infrastructure advisory, something like enterprise architecture 4.0, or doing something on hacking stuff, and how to do the latest hacks and mobile security and stuff. So stay tuned. Jumping ahead, this is what the agenda is for the evening. I'm sure that you must have got it with the invite. Basically, it is something about the blockchain, how it works, what are the basics, and what is meant by distributed ledger, because it's on basis of a distributed ledger that blockchain works anyway. So what is the current and future proposition, where it can lead, in which enterprise, difference between public and private blockchains, and of course some slides on Bitcoin. Many people confuse Bitcoin with blockchain. Many people don't even know that Bitcoin is in actually relation to blockchain. So anyway, and what could be the exact limitation and criticisms? You got a few of them too. So going ahead now, a quick show of hands. There are quite a few, almost 100 odd people who have come today, and let's start from the top. How many of you have actually heard of Bitcoins? Don't worry, I'm not recording how many of you have raised your hands. This is not a survey where your responses will be recorded and shared with somebody. That doesn't happen. All right, so how many of you okay, quite not many, but okay, a few of them, few of you. Anyway, thank you for sharing. So okay, you've heard of Bitcoins. Very nice. Okay, but still the numbers are pretty low for those of you even heard of Bitcoins. How many of you, okay, the next point, how many of you actually own Bitcoins, any sort of cryptocurrency? I know that the government is vehemently against it, and I am not going to report you. Neither are your hand signals being recorded anywhere. So don't worry. I personally assure you that I'm maintaining due security on this. Okay, not many. Okay, even I don't have much of it anyway. So how many of you actually feel you understand how the blockchain works? Okay, a few, of course. I'm sure that you will be having some queries, otherwise you would be online today, and feel you can summarize the benefits of such a trust-based economy. Okay, lastly, how many of you actually worked on projects that involve blockchain technology implementation and or related activities? This will be interesting to see how many of you have actually worked on any sort of blockchain technologies. Oh, not many, but still, I'm surprised. Okay, glad. Thank you so much for your involvement. Okay, so as far as I can see from the show of hands, at least, that Bitcoin is still something that people are a bit scared about, and how it might work, how might not that work. And I understand your apprehension, so do I have a few. Anyway, going ahead, a blockchain overview. What is it all about? This is a summary of it. I've got quite a few slides actually, and my time is so less. Okay, it is something of a distributed ledger, and don't worry, we are going to get into what you mean by distributed ledger. What I mean by that is it is something like an audit trail or something like ledger. A ledger is like for those of you having any sort of understanding of accounts, a ledger is like detailing of all the transactions, like anything and everything that has happened, incoming, outgoing, rejects, stores, everything. So of transaction between two or more parties, it is split into blocks, which is each containing details. So one block, multiple blocks containing the details, and they are added to a pre-existing chain of prior transaction, and which is then validated by the entire network together. So again, there is no one. It's like, if I can give you a good example, a blockchain is like an internet within an internet. Like nobody owns the internet. Like I remember when internet first came to India, that was back in 95, 96 when it's really started, and people are all were under the impression as to how it might be working. Then somebody thought, okay, maybe US owns it, and it was very difficult to convey at that time, that is, no, nobody owns the internet. Even if the entire US goes down, the internet goes down, of course it will be a massive blow, but still internet would still be active across other countries. And that's how it is. So it is validated by an entire peer-to-peer based network. We'll get into this more in detail as to how it works and how it is added to the chains. I've got a short video also that you can see as we go ahead. So there are some compelling attributes as to why blockchain. So there is a consensus involved. That is, all parties to a shared fact know the fact that they see is the one all parties see. So what it means by that is all the parties in all the nodes that is involved in a blockchain transaction, all the areas that are involved in blockchain transactions, all of them knows what is happening across the entire network. Now that cannot be said about the internet per se. So for example, if I'm accessing a site sitting in maybe New York, somebody sitting in China or somebody sitting in India might not be aware that of what is happening anywhere. An ISP in India or an ISP in Bangladesh or France may not be aware of what is happening with some ISP in the US. So but over here, as far as knowledge is concerned about what is happening on a blockchain ledger, that is known to everyone everywhere. So there is a consent. So it is more like a bearer bonds, like everybody knows what are the bond numberings, and it allows secure authentication without a credentialing authority or trust. That is, it's totally anonymous. You have your own digital signature to sign it, have a SHA 256 based signatures, and there's the end of it. So resilience is there is no single point of failure, and there is no single super user that can compromise everything. So there is no single node or maybe a single block that can be hacked, which can through which somebody can steal your bitcoins or maybe manipulate to add more bitcoins. It doesn't work that way. Okay, so everything is a shared fact, and each update is only valid if it builds on a previously unchangeable body of previous updates. We'll get into this also. There's an interesting video, so stay with me on that. So what does it promise? Basically, this is what was there in 2015. The Economist, it says the technology behind Bitcoin could transform literally how technology works, how economy works. And going ahead, I'll show you how blockchain can be integrated with almost all the verticals, and what is a USP that could be there, what could be the ROI that could be there for those enterprises too. We'll get into that. But there are many stories also that gets built up as to what is a blockchain all about. So look at this. Huffington Post: blockchain is a disruption you simply have to embrace inside the tech that could change the face of modern finance. And look at this. NATO is seeking innovation for military blockchain applications, and schools are recording students results using Bitcoin tech because it simply cannot be hacked. So yeah, and you are aware that somebody hacks into the school database and changes the grades. Well, if you have blockchain based system, it cannot be done. So going ahead, what else is heard about blockchains? So many stories are built up, that it can do this, it can do that, and blockchain. Like if I give you a similarity, like after the few years back when the Higgs boson was proven, um, the people on the extreme were so ecstatic that it was supposed to solve all the existential questions of life. This happens, oh, we got the Higgs boson. If oh, this happens, oh, we've proven the Higgs boson, even though there is no relation. So there are many, fairy tales around. So of course, it cannot do some things like, reverse aging or bring peace to the Middle East. That's again a different story. So that's really not really going to happen with the blockchain. Going ahead, of course, save the Republican Party. Of course, I'm neither a Democrat nor a Republican, but now it's got nothing to do with it, so no sort of manipulation can get that done. Of course, there are some real indices of promises. There is an incredible array of participants who are working towards blockchain. Look at this. I'm sure that you would have heard of all the names, and they're working on Bitcoin on blockchains. Just for the Bitcoin, the market capitalization is about 7 billion, and it's received venture capitalist funding about more than a billion, 1.1, and the projected investment was about a billion just in the year 17-18. But there are some issues because it is like a democracy, because it's like everybody has to agree. It is fracturing over trifles, small trifling issues. The blockchain is fragmenting, and that is one of my fears too, because there are no centrally controlled authorities. So there is Bitcoin, for example, is not the only currency. There are more than 4,000 different currencies. I don't know how many of you are aware of that. I'll show you the screen for that. There are more than 4,000 known currencies for Bitcoin for using the blockchain technology. So everyone coming up with their own version. Um, you know, so there's Linux, Unix, so many flavors coming up. Everybody making their own, trying to say that they are the best. But let us look at the genesis of it all. In the beginning, there was the coin. That is AB, which is how does it work? Let's just see. In 2008, that was the first year of the blockchain of the Bitcoin. One sec. Yes, the Genesis block. Let's just see how it all began. So that is 31 BB, 31 years before blockchain. It actually happened in 2008. So like back in 1977, RSA invented the first, they proposed a digital currency. And there was an anonymous cryptocurrency introduced by some Chom in 1982 also. Can you think about it? So long back. Encryption was at its nascent stage, and so many things were really at its nascent stages, and still somebody had anonymously introduced, had introduced cryptocurrency in an anonymous manner. And proof of work was introduced again in 1993. That's 11 years after 1982, and the first, first proof of work based cryptocurrency was introduced in 1996. RSA. You might have heard of this, Rivest and Shamir, who were the pioneers behind the RSA. And then again, the P2P currency came up in 2002, and finally in 2008, the Bitcoin was introduced. It was underpinned by academic and scientific innovation. There was no single government driving it. There was no, organization driving it. It was all open, like freeware sort of community work that has happened over here for blockchains. Now going ahead, there is, as you see, where it all began. It was introduced in 2008 by a person called Satoshi Nakamoto. Now you may hear this name like 20 places, but the whole thing is, understand, there is nobody knows who this gentleman or female is. You heard me right. Probably the greatest innovator in recent times, and we don't know who he is. He or she rather, it could be a female also, no doubt about it. He introduced the paper for Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer cash system, and the bitcoin.org was registered. And it was at that time that he proposed this blockchain-based system with no reliance on trust, digital signature-based, all peer-to-peer network, submitted a POC, a proof of work. He gave public history of transactions, and all honest, independent people could honestly and independently generate their own bitcoins. And there was again the rules and incentives, which has led to the development of Bitcoin anyway. Now, at that time, it was the first digital currency, the first cryptocurrency. And as of now, the maximum bitcoins that could be generated is 21 million. And that is very interesting. The reason being that ups the ante in the sense that, if the amount of land is fixed in a prime area, as the demand grows, the price grows. That is why the price of per Bitcoin is exceeding, $6,000 at this time. So the more energy is invested to solving complex mathematical problems, those systems earn bitcoins. So at this time, if you visit this site, cryptocoincharts.info coins info, you can see that there is more than 4,600 different cryptocurrencies, and the most circulated are Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Litecoin. So there are these different variants also available to blockchain. So how does it work? It works on the basis of a distributed ledger. Now stay with me on this. This is slightly complicated, but it is not rocket science. I'm sure that you will pick it up. So in a bank, how does it work? Let's look at a bank. This is centralized ledger, and there's a bank. There are 4 clients, A, B, C, D. There are multiple ledgers, but the bank holds a golden record. So the bank gets manipulated, everything gets manipulated. The client B, which each of the clients needs to reconcile its ledger with the bank. So the core of any bank, of any sort of banking system, is the core banking system or the central ledger which is there in the bank in itself. So that's how any bank works anywhere. So there is no question on that. One second. Okay, there is Ritu who's asked an interesting question over here. Apart from apart from cryptocurrency, what are the other applications that we can use blockchain? That's interesting. Ritu, thank you for the question. And what will happen is that towards the end, I have made a list of that. As to, it's a very interesting technology and where all it can be used and how it can be used. That is one of the core purposes of why we are having this session today. So blockchain is not only Bitcoin. There are many other ways in which it can be used. Just think about it. Is NASA behind NASA behind Bitcoin or a blockchain only to earn cryptocurrency? Well, not really the case. But okay, going ahead, we'll come to this towards the end. There are many slides where I've dedicated for this. Okay, but in a blockchain scenario, there is only one ledger. All nodes have some level of access to that ledger. Okay, and all the nodes have the ledger, and so that's where, so if one node also manipulates, it's not going to make any difference. The reason being, the other nodes will correct it. It'll auto correct this faulty ledger in a particular node because the others have the replicated original or true data. So we'll get into that also, how this thing works. Okay, now this is how the transactions happen. User initiates transactions using the digital signature. User broadcast their transactions to other nodes. You saw the nodes earlier. These are different nodes in a distributed ledger of a Bitcoin based system. So user broadcasts a transaction to other nodes. One or more of the nodes begin to validate each other transaction. What do I mean by validate? All the Bitcoin transaction needs to have a unique hash value. So it begins to validate that that particular transaction based on the block which is where it is supposed to be located. The nodes aggregate validated transaction into blocks. Now the blocks cannot be added just by anybody. There are different rules and checks and balances for that also. And then how it moves is that the nodes broadcast the blocks to each other. That is how they are maintaining that no one person can compromise or hack into the entire Bitcoin system. And there is a consensus that all of them agree that, okay, this transaction is a valid transaction. And then at the end, we have the block reflecting the true state, which is chained back to the prior block. So each of those blocks are interlocked to each other. We'll see how that is done also. Now, blockchain and cryptography. So where all is cryptography used? It's all based on cryptography. So there is an initiation and broadcasting of transaction, which is used using digital signature, private and public keys. There's a validation of transaction, which could be the proof that you actually have done work based on which Bitcoin was issued to you. And whatever certain alternatives that it may be. And for chaining to a particular block, a transaction to a particular block, a hash function is used. We'll come into that also. Now look at the power of a distributed ledger. Because it is distributed, that is where it is so impressive, and that's where it gets very interesting. It can be used without a central authority by individuals or entities with no basis to trust each other. So it's like the internet; they're all interconnected. They're all, there's no reason that somebody is related to somebody or paying something to somebody. They're all supporting each other and building on top of each other. So it can be used to create value or issue assets. We'll see what is meant by issue assets. That's where the application of blockchain to various other enterprises also comes into place. So it can be used to transfer value or the ownership of assets. That's where the smart contract comes into place. So it is not just money. So even your contracts can be stored. There is a smart contract concept over here. We'll look into that also. And it can even be used for a record those transfer of values or ownership of assets. So even your land records can be stored on the blockchain concept. So like I hear stories I've seen where somebody pays some money to the particular registrar of land records and is able to usurp or usurp land parcels actually belonging to somebody else. But if there is a blockchain in place, if one fraudulent person, what to say, manipulates a record, it's not going to help, because it won't be in sync with the rest of the ledgers at all the other nodes, and those other nodes will then correct this fraudulent transaction on its in an automated manner. So the degree of trust determines the technology configuration of a distributed ledger. So bigger, smaller, depending on the horsepower that a particular system is able to offer. Now that brings me to the next one, that is the key concept of blockchain. That's what made blockchain famous: Bitcoin. Anyway, it's a protocol that supports decentralized, pseudo-anonymous, peer-to-peer digital currency using the blockchain framework. It's a publicly disclosed linked ledger of transactions stored in a blockchain. So again, publicly disclosed, so your name doesn't go. Understand? I used the word earlier of bearer bond. I hope you remember, I mentioned a bearer bond. So whomsoever has those hashing functions, whomsoever has that hash value, he owns that particular Bitcoin. So again, a reward driven system, because I remember hearing about it like 10 years back, and at that time, I feel like such an ass, because at that time, there was some software going around that you could install on your system, and then it is used the spare horsepower on your system for doing some advanced calculations in a disparate manner, and at the end of it you will get some cryptocurrency. But I found it like, who's going to do that? Might be a virus and stuff like that, and I didn't do it. And it was so much easier, like 8-10 years back, to make bitcoins. But many people like me, okay, don't shake your head at me, I can see you doing that. So uh, many people didn't take up that what to say opportunity. Now it is literally not possible to do it sitting at home, but at that time it was very well possible. Now this is how it was. This is paper that was released on the 10th of, sorry, 31st of October 2008, submitted by Satoshi Nakamoto. So again, that individual has disappeared. There is a lot of speculation around who, where, how, who that person is, but there is no trace of who that person actually is. Okay, it is deflationary in value. The reward is cut in half every 4 years, and tokens can be irrevocably destroyed. That's how it works basically. And there is nearly infinite divisible currency units. So, for example, sitting in India, there is 100 paise to a rupee, and there is 100 cents to a dollar, and stuff like that. So, even the Bitcoin, one BTC, can go up to 8 decimal points, known as a Satoshi or a non-cent. And again, there is a transaction fee that might be levied for, or any sort of transaction on the Bitcoin, but the cost is the same, $0.01. But the cost is the same if you're sending 1 cent or you're sending $1 million. So the cost is the same. There is no proportionate amount that is charged. So there is a central authority. It is counterfeit resilient. You cannot just add coins. You cannot be the owner of a block and just add coins, and you cannot really double spend it, because once the expense happens, it is noted in the ledger, it is noted in the audit trails, it cannot be reused again. The same thing by the same person again. So you cannot submit the same Bitcoin twice and ensure and hope that it goes through. It's never going to happen. So again, in case you lose it, it's over, because I remember reading about somebody who had in a very foolish manner, like almost like 2,000 bitcoins he had stored on a particular hard drive, the values, the hash values, and he didn't realize that it's going to go up. It was stored on his hard drive, and he scrapped his machine, and the hard drive went in the dump. And then he spent weeks and months scouring the dump yard, huge dump yard, like you understand how cities are, huge dump yard, looking for that particular laptop or that hard drive which could contain those bitcoins. He would have been a multi-millionaire anyway. So sorry for him, but that's what it happens. Okay, Ritu again asked another question: can two or more nodes do fraud and own manipulate coin value? No, the tip off point is 51%. So unless more than half the nodes agree for doing a fraudulent transaction, it's not going to happen. But again, there are thousands of nodes contacting and doing a consensual activity, which is a fraud, not really going to happen. Okay, Rajiv Day, he asked an important question. I'm sorry, I don't know whether it's he or she, but how does the system identify a fraudulent transaction within the blockchain system? Okay, I'm coming up to that. We've got a small video. I'll just show it up, and then you will understand it better. Give me a minute. Okay, he referenced the creation. Look at this. Satoshi Nakamoto, he began with the Genesis block of 50 coin. He created the first 50 coins. That is August 18. Domain name bitcoin.org was registered. October 31st, paper released. November 9th, Bitcoin project registered at sourceforge.net. Wow, and look at this, the Genesis block. The first block was released on 6:15 p.m. Greenwich Meridian Time, GMT, and version 1.0.1 was released. Now it's almost 2.0 if I'm not mistaken. And January 12, 2009, the first Bitcoin transaction, block 170, from Satoshi to Hal Finney happened. It's there online. You can look it up in Wiki history. Okay, why does it have a value? That's the whole point. That why does a Bitcoin have value? So this is the nice quip that I read somewhere. The worth of a thing is the price that it will bring. That's how it is. So how how it can be traded, it builds a huge amount of secrecy around it. It builds a huge amount of identity loss around the person. So there is no way that a particular Bitcoin can be associated with a particular person. So it brings anonymity. You can buy and sell anything that you want. So on the dark web, most of it that happens is the Bitcoin. That's why it's preferred even by people who are doing the ransomware things. And how does it matter? Look at this. It's $3.6 billion market capitalization as of now. Okay. Now look at this. Decentralized digital wallet operates in a peer-to-peer mode, so everybody has access to it. That's what I'm trying to say. That the distributed ledger, the digital wallet, everybody has access to it. So I can't simply override some particular code in my wallet and say that okay, I don't have 5 bitcoins. I have basically 5,000 bitcoins. It doesn't work that way, because when it bootstraps, it finds other wallets, and because your transactions are not just stored on your system but all the other systems. So if your system has a different value, it's going to replicate and autocorrect itself. Now look at this. The wallet will synchronize with the network by downloading all of the transactions starting from the Genesis block if necessary, about 20 GB. And using a gossip protocol, it shares all the transaction information with all the peers. So whatever you sent, received, which Bitcoin you have already used, transferred to whom, all that goes immediately to all the wallets and all the blocks everywhere in the world. So your simple manipulation is not really going to help. And how the coin flows from input to output, look at this. Look at it this way: a coin owner transfers coins by digitally signing a hash digest of the previous transactions and the public key of the next owner. That's combined together. The signature is then appended to the end of the coin. This is how it is. Transaction owner one's public key, which is hashed together. with the owner 0 signature hashed together, and then it is uploaded to the next transaction. Owner 2 transfers to owner 3. So that's how, and all these transaction audit trails are stored in the blockchain itself. So the ledger stores all the keys of transactions across. Now again, the pseudo anonymous, so it uses the ECC cryptography to keep its key strength good and have shorter keys. Now all the transactions are set to public key addresses only. So all is public key. These are how it is. These are the hash values transferred from X to Y. And the wallet listens for transactions addressed to any of its own public keys. Now for transferring, you need to decrypt it and then hash it again with your public key. That is how it is. So I transfer one particular Bitcoin to you, it is hashed with your public key. Now to transfer it again, it needs to decrypt it with your private keys. Anybody having a private key would be able to decrypt it. So then you again decrypt it and then send it to somebody else. Now coins are sent. Look at this. What do you mean by send? How do you send coins? It is broadcasting the transaction to the network which are verifiable to be verified to be viable and then added to the block. So if I'm transferring some Bitcoins to you, or better, if you are transferring some Bitcoins to me, you can't just send me a public key or stuff like that and assume it is done, because you need to hash it, send it to me. I need to hash it with my private key, my public key, and then that transaction has to be sent across onto the network, onto the blockchain network. If not, that transaction is simply invalid. Okay, there's a public ledger again, previous hash. There's a nonce. Nonce means smaller values of the Bitcoin. Every viable signature is stored in a public ledger. All transactions placed in blocks, which are linked by SHA 256 hashes, not 64, not 128, directly 256. And then arriving at a consensus. That is, everyone. This is how the blocks are working. They are all interconnected to each other. So block 1 transfers to block 2 and 4. Block 4 transfers to block 7, 8, 3, and so on, and all interconnected to each other. The longest path represents the accepted chain. So the accepted chain over here is this. The longer the path, the more computation was expended to building it. So as the number of transactions goes up, the amount of computation power required for extending it also goes up. And then again, there is a concept of mining. So mining means like you can actually create your own Bitcoins. So earlier it was very simple, but now it is very difficult. There are specific methodologies for that. It used to be very simple earlier. Now this is a video I was talking about. It's there from bitcoining mining.com. So how it actually works, you can quickly take a look. I found this video very interesting, so I'm just playing it for you.
What is Bitcoin mining? Bitcoin operates as a peer-to-peer network. This means that everyone who uses Bitcoin is a tiny fraction of the bank of Bitcoin. But where do Bitcoins come from? With paper money, a government decides when to print and distribute money. Bitcoin doesn't have a central government. With Bitcoin, miners use special software to solve math problems and are issued a certain number of Bitcoins in exchange. This provides a smart way to issue the currency and also creates an incentive for more people to mine. And since miners are required to approve Bitcoin transactions, more miners means a more secure network. The Bitcoin network automatically changes the difficulty of the math problems, depending on how fast they're being solved. In the early days, Bitcoin miners solved these math problems with the processors in their computers. Soon, miners discovered that graphics cards used for gaming were much better suited to this kind of math. Graphics cards are faster, but they use more electricity and generate a lot of heat. The first commercial Bitcoin mining products included chips that were reprogrammed for mining Bitcoin. These chips were faster, but still power-hungry. ASIC, or Application-Specific Integrated Circuit chips, are designed specifically for Bitcoin mining. ASIC technology has made Bitcoin mining even faster while using less power. As the popularity of Bitcoin increases, more miners join the network, making it more difficult for individuals to solve the math problems. To overcome this, miners have developed a way to work together in pools. Pools of miners find solutions faster than their individual members, and each miner is rewarded proportionate to the amount of work he or she provides. Mining is an important and integral part of Bitcoin that ensures fairness while keeping the Bitcoin network stable, safe, and secure. For more information about Bitcoin mining, visit bitcoinmining.com.
So then the question comes that who all are actually using Bitcoins? Quite a few. Look this up. Newegg, Microsoft, Tesla Motors, Time, Virgin Galactic. You heard of Richard Branson, right? WordPress, and again, BitPay claims to have 44,000 merchants. So the popularity, there is no doubt about it, is growing quite a bit. So what can we do with it? Blockchain, that is, besides Bitcoin. That is the question that was asked by I think Ritu and others also. Okay, Ritu has again asked, can notes borrow or loan coins? No, not really. No, they can't, because once it gets hashed with somebody's value, it depends on that person. Then it's like a person to person agreement. So there cannot be a time frame after that. The person may simply decide not to pay back a loan. And there is no way that there is no appealing authority. Understand that in Bitcoin, there is no appealing authority that you can go and appeal to and get your tokens back. It's not going to happen. Okay, so that's it. So what can we do with this thing, with Bitcoin? Blockchain. Quite a few things are coming up. Beyond, okay, this is an interesting title, but pretty funny. What color do you want that blockchain? Okay. Traditional versus smart contracts. Look at it this way. Even contracts are now getting stored using Bitcoins, using blockchains. Traditional contracts, paperwork, manual remittances, escrow required. It is expensive. Physical presence means it needs a wet signature. You have to sign it off in the presence of somebody with a pen. You can't just put a scanned signature on it. Might need lawyers to authenticate it. But with the smart contracts based on blockchain, again, all the remittances, it can be done in minutes. Remittances in Bitcoins happen immediately, and escrow might not be necessary. It's a fraction of the cost, because the cost is the same whether you're transferring 1 cent or $1 million. So virtual presence again is not required, because it's signed with a digital signature, and again, lawyer is not required. Look at this: smart contracts moving from simple to complex. How does it work? A family member sends some bitcoins to another family member. That consumer buys a digital contact stream. That is, you can buy maybe some songs on Apple, stuff like that. Now, basic smart contract. That's a landlord remotely locks non-paying tenant out of apartment. How does that happen? Because blockchains can be integrated with IoT also, in case they don't pay up. That is, multi-party smart contract. Seller lends buyer funds to buy a house. Again, Ritu, you just asked me basically how can loans be given. Now, again, if you look at it over here, multi-party smart contract. Seller lends buyer funds to buy a house. Again, using bitcoins and blockchains to ratify the contract. But then getting into the lawyer, the legal perspective, the person to whom the funds are actually given, he can actually say, I don't want to pay you back, or can simply go bankrupt. So those areas, of course, are not covered. But again, it depends on an agreement, which could be a paper based or anything else between people. Distributed autonomous business unit of a corporation issues its own bonds, and buyers monitor payments via a shared ledger. We'll get into this. So it's moving from simple to complex. Look at this: distributed autonomous society. Trade agreements, everything can be done using blockchain. Now, blockchain ownership records can be stored using blockchain technologies, transfer using trade settlements, again, because you have the unique ID of your property and the rights to it. So then the ownership of the records can also be maintained likewise. Payments like dividends, everything can be done using Bitcoins and blockchains. Um, Corporate actions, because if all the contracts are there on blockchain, the corporate actions, which will be splits, acquisition, and spin-offs, can also happen using blockchain in itself. Proxy weighting and tabulation. Now, don't just think about money. Corporate action like splits and acquisition doesn't just mean bitcoins being transferred. Don't get it in that way. Now, blockchain, as we saw earlier, is just a very safe way, very secure way of storing uh, um, your contracts, your information. with no fear that it can be counterfeited or manipulated or hacked into. So again, product provenance, how products are provided. Look at this thing: B2B API integration. So all the product asset journey, all the data can again be stored by using a blockchain technology, and every one of them can have total visibility into what is happening to his data or his product, and track it likewise if required. Okay, IoT again, we have seen earlier that is, it's very well possible that even the devices can be controlled using IoT, which is there, which is a prevalent technology now. But again, they can be working on a network like now it could be internet, other it could be blockchain by IoT triggered smart contracts, IoT augmented asset information, IoT device verification tracking. So all the master edges can be stored on a blockchain technology integrated with artificial intelligence. So if there is any deviation, the IoT device can take a call and take action if required, like how we saw earlier, like owner can lock a tenant house if rent is not paid on time. Consumer contract automation, again, all this, whether it's insurance claim, airline compensation, apartment rental, all these contracts, all these payouts, all the even the information can be there on the blockchain ledgers, so it can be shared across people with no sort of thought process as to maybe it can get manipulated or it can get hacked into. Use case for the government, now government to citizen, asset registry, asset exchange. Now everybody has these various privacy of information can also be maintained, so it's not that everybody can see everybody. You can have your own privacy uh, you know um, criterion defined. Even the identity can be managed out using blockchain. Government to vendor is there, government to government, all the contract management, again blockchain, because the information is there and verifiable without the risk of anybody doing an undue change to it. Energy distribution, again, now what can happen, you think, okay, how can you distribute energy using blockchain? Okay, power created by a central source and transmitted to end consumers, often over long distances. So there's a lot of transmission loss that happens, as you can see, from the power station going via national transmission lines. Now, if there is, um, why does this happen in that case? See, the reason being that, let's assume I'm buying power from grid one, and then so all the power that is supplied to me comes from grid one. But what if there are multiple grids and they're all sharing how much power is generated and who's using what power where? So I can very well use power from coming from a grid which is closest to me, and all the transactions can be stored in the blockchain ledger. It's already being used in Brooklyn as a Brooklyn microgrid. Healthcare and pharma, all your health records, secure distributed patient health records. And again, you can build layers of security over it so that the directory doesn't become like a free for all and everybody can see who's got what and what medication or what issues the person is going through. And there's a business network of payer providers, financial institutions, even claim processing can happen over there. And there cannot be any sort of claim fraud. The reason being, how many claims a person has made, what is his identity. Many a time these frauds happen because the data is not shared across multiple you know um, insurance providers. But what if the data can be shared using a blockchain technology? If that is there, then everybody knows what is the background of the person who signed up for the insurance and what has been the way the person has worked so far. Again, async global publishing, this is with regards to media. So again, even for the media people, you can use the publishing layer of the blockchain to transfer your data in a manner that it can be tracked out. This is something interesting that I kept towards the last. There is Ethereum. You might want to look it up beyond Bitcoin. There is an Ethereum. Again, it is for smart contracts. Very interesting. They have a very good presentation also online as to how how Bitcoins can be used for providing smart contracts. They have a proof of work. They have an API built on top of it also, and even an application that uses blockchain at the heart of it. And okay, they are using Solidity for contract generation contract writing, which is like the most popular language which is used in blockchains. Beyond this, there is something called as a hyperledger. Now, since there are so many variations of blockchain coming up, all coming up with their own variations of blockchain technologies, there is a hyperledger. So what this is like a open source initiative. So they are working towards how different blockchain technologies can share information across their networks. So then the horizon becomes like unlimited, because if I'm using a Bitcoin technology, Bitcoin implementation, I can't move into Ethereum or some other variations of Litecoin. There are so many Bitcoin Pay and so many other variations of blockchain Bitcoin. And if there is a hyperledger in place which consolidates the information across all these various different blockchain technologies, then it gets simpler for everyone. But it's not really um, you know in force full now. It's working towards it, but I'm sure it will get there very soon. Criticism and challenges, this is something that even bothers me to some level, because after the massive blow that SSL has gone through, I'm sure you understand what I mean. SSL at one time was synonymous with network security, but then in one blow SSL has been felt across the world. So it is a nascent technology. I'm just if everything shifts like this to blockchain, what if something comes up? Of course, that what if scenario cannot be extinguished, but it'll be something like how the internet started, and at that time everybody was a bit very wary of it, but after some time it was noticed that the risk outweigh the benefits. So I hope that happens soon, because many people are still skeptical about it, how it will work, how the security can be maintained, if at all. And again, challenges associated with audit, tax, compliance. Because of the anonymity that blockchain offers, the audit, tax, and compliance becomes a problem. Privacy again. So again, for large energy consumption, because as the number of block grows, the amount of energy consumed by the systems, which are the blocks in the blockchain, or the ledgers, who are the distributed ledgers, they consume a huge amount of energy. I'll just show you what that means. Energy consumption, this is like area of heavy criticism for this thing. So are attempting, look at this, the Bitcoin blockchain network miners are attempting 450,000 trillion solutions per second, using a huge amount of computer power. There are also opportunities to decentralize the energy grid. So look at the wasted resources. Mining Bitcoin wastes huge amount of energy, about like $15 million worth of energy per day. Now, impact on the IT audit function. This is something, again, somebody had asked me. Now, it is still in its infancy, and it's still not become like a proven technology that can be used directly. And I wouldn't be surprised if it slumps going ahead, but um, I hope it does well. The identity management landscape is again likely to shift dramatically, because your entire identity can be done using a blockchain technology in a very anonymous manner. I know that's almost like a paradox, but it can be done. Now, again, there will be evolution, like how the cloud came and everybody was speaking the same thing. That is, how will the IT audit work once everything moves to the cloud? Well, how will IT audit works once things move to blockchain? That's how it is going to happen. So, of course, the IT audit function also needs to evolve itself further. Compliance burden is going to be very high, because many countries like India do not allow any sort of blockchain transactions. It is illegal. So going ahead, that's going to be a challenge. These are a few references that you might want to see. The truth about blockchain that you might want to see. There are many nice resources I put over here that you might want to see on how it is working. Okay, that brings me to the end. These are the past webinars. We completed 17 so far. I had to run a bit, but I've crossed my limit. It's five. It's almost like 50 minutes now. The next one that is coming up is something again that has come up by a popular, many people asking for the same thing, that is tackling security in the cloud, especially identity management, access control, and authentication. We have already done a few sessions on the cloud. For example, session number 4 was PCI DSS and the cloud, top risk and mitigation. That is, again, I was speaking at ISACA, And again, in Isaka also, I had spoken on the same topic. So if you go to a YouTube page, it is there. If you have any questions, always do write to us. But again, we don't really get into products because we are product neutral. Okay, so that's a big thank you to you to be there. But of course, there's a brief survey at the end of it. We put in a huge amount of effort to, do the sessions, prepare for it, make the presentations, and we don't charge you for it. What we all ask is leave a note at the end of it so we feel good about it, and let us know what you think. If you have any specific queries that you want us to take up, write to me. I will respond to you. So, okay, somebody asked what is my email address. Okay, I'm giving it to you. This is my again YouTube page. Do subscribe, and you can also see the past webinars which have already been covered. There's a Facebook page, facebook.com/VistaInfosec. You can read. We put up a ton of content online. There's a LinkedIn page. Again, we keep on posting very interesting snippets and what all things are happening in the world. Okay, these are my coordinates with regards to my email address and my contact details. Do drop me a line or an email, and we will get back to you. Looking up the queries, there are a few more questions that people have asked, but I'm sorry, my friends. I'm really not in a position to take it up now. But what I'll do is that I'll definitely respond to you by mail, and I hope that satisfies. Anyway, do respond to fill the feedback sheet at the end of the webinar, and have a wonderful weekend ahead. Have a wonderful day ahead, evening ahead, and do sign up for our next webinar coming up on October. That is. Thank you again. Bye bye.